Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar. I already see lots of hellos in the chat from Brussels, from the Bay Area, from Canada, Calgary, Richmond, Virginia, all kinds of places, Chile, all over the world. Super happy to have you. Thank you so much for coming. Today's topic is debunking the hype around enterprise AI agents in March 2025, which is right now, almost April, in fact. So let's introduce Florian. My name's Lynn. I'll be guiding you through today's webinar, but our main speaker is Florian, who is our founder and CEO here at Dataiku. Hi, Florian.
Hi, Lynn.
Nice to have you. And I'm super excited about today's format because what we're going to be doing is kind of a more rapid style Q&A. And so I know everyone always says they want the audience to participate, but I really do want you guys to participate. I think Florian's excited to hear what you all think. AI agents are such a new topic that we truly are interested in hearing what you guys have to say. So during each question, get on the chat, let us know what you think. We'll be watching it and sort of hopefully being able to react to what you think. If you disagree with Florian, if you agree, happy to have your opinions either way. In addition to the kind of rapid style Q&A, we also will have some time for Q&A at the end. So if there are questions that we're not going to get to that are burning in your mind about AI agents and you want to ask Florian, please do put those in the Q&A section, and hopefully we'll have some time at the end to get to at least some of those questions. A few other housekeeping things. The webinar is being recorded, so don't worry, you'll automatically receive a copy of that recording after the session. And just in case, hopefully you're not, but if you're having any technical issues, refresh, use the chat. Our organizers are on hand to help you if you're having any technical issues. So without further ado, let's get to it. Florian, the first question I have for you is, isn't agentic development just a buzzword for automation that we've already been doing for so much time? What's different about it today?
Oh my God, you're starting with a hype question.
Why not?
Yeah, I think that there is. Let me start with a bit of hype and try as fast as possible to debunk it. And please, audience, keep me honest there. And I can see your messages live. The way I think about it is that there is a way to think about agentic development as being indeed a new wave of software. Okay, great. But I think what's interesting there to realize for all of us is that there was, and there still is, when you're building software, things you had to care about in order to build great software versus not so great software. For instance, back in the days, and still a little bit now, you had to care about memory and memory allocation. You had to care about algorithmics. You had to care about parallelization of compute. You had to care about architecture and distributed computing and those systems and redundancies and all of the good things. And so I think that if agentic is really a way to build a new kind of systems that are not software, in fact, they are something else. The thing that I see as interesting is that there are new things that you need to care about, new type of trade-off. It's no longer the memory, compute, whatever trade-off you had to be very good at when building algorithms or being a great software engineer. There is a new things that we see among our customers with new type of trade-off, like is it a big problem where you need actually to build a robust data set, specific data set, either as a ground truth or in order to RL your model, for instance, and understand this when building the system, how big need the data, the ground truth need to be for it to be reliable enough at the end. And so get a sense of that and build approximation or a sense as a practitioner around that. Should I need only 100 lines, 10 lines, 0 lines, or do I need actually 10,000 examples for my system to be either tested or reliable? And there is another trade-off, which is more subtle one, especially when you talk about like agent reasoning and all of that good stuff, is the question of pathways and pathways explosion. when people think about agent and when we think about agent, a way that people interpret it is that an agent should be autonomous, as in they actually build their own plan of how they should solve the problem. And so here the metaphor is you can have the agent is choosing by itself the execution path and the set of tools to utilize in order to get to the answer. And it makes sense because the answer of each tool will actually define what the next step is. And you build this type of metaphor of potentially an unlimited number of execution pathways. But we also, when getting and discussing with our customer on the way they think about building agents and using agents, in some circumstances, just because it's an existing enterprise process, they kind of like already know the path. So they want to make sure that the list of steps is actually this one and not another one. And again, it's a question of trade-off. And so our starting point, all of us, was building software where it was about programming in a completely deterministic environment. And the current question about agentic and building agentic system is building systems that are not completely deterministic, making those trade-offs between not deterministic at all or actually following certain pathways and just combining information and data in the right way and certain generative tasks in the middle. And the question from building software, assuming it to be deterministic and testing it in a rigorous manner. And we've got a new way, which is building system that kind of work and that needs to be refined or tested with here the trade-off, either small data set or very large data sets. And so I think that's what's new if I'm using the hat of a practitioner, at least, of how you build the systems between the past way and the new way.
Great. We already have so many questions rolling in from the audience, so I want to keep it moving because I think hopefully we'll get through as many of these as possible. Lots of people agreeing with you in the chat and excited that you're kind of taking a real approach to agents. The next question I think builds off of what you were saying in the answer to the first, which is, can we really build robust software if we give up control over execution pathways? Like how does that work? Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, I think that's I think here it's here there is what we see in practice among our customers is them being still cautious of this trade-off, as in thinking that the reasoning step of an agent will completely define the pathways is something that is interesting in terms of having some magic into it and ability to be robust to a multiplicity of cases. And it's, I think, very relevant when you want to use an agent for, I would say, information discovery path. I mean, seeing that customers that use it for market intelligence, market research type of task, things where you want to be very fluid in terms of where the information should be and adaptive to that, it's interesting. So it's as if you had a pathway, but usually it's end up being a pathway where the depth is not so high because you have a limited number of steps. It's just you could have lots of different ones if you imagine a tree of pathways. Among our enterprise customers, I think that those that want to replicate an existing business process are more cautious and actually want to, in some circumstances, almost define by themselves what the agent should do in the sense of more think about it as a semi-deterministic type of system where the total number of pathways is finite, meaning the way to actually solve the problem is finite. It's just you let the agent maybe decide one or the other and combine those steps. And so in this thinking, it's almost as if it means that, for instance, when you trace back the agent and look at the set of tools that was asked, you get a finite number of different tasks, of different ways to combine the task, which is way easier in terms of debugging and understanding how it works. And I think that in the next, let's say, couple of months, it would be one or the other, mostly for most enterprise use cases.
Let's shift gears a little bit because I think one of the potentially the most hyped terms of maybe like the last 3 to 4 months ago was prompt engineering. Everyone was like, that's going to be the new job. That's the new thing. That's what everyone's going to be doing. Is prompt engineering really an engineering discipline? Or is it really a matter of just creativity and sort of fiddling around with words? What's your view on that?
I think it's a discipline, but a discipline which part of it can commoditize very quickly because the models themselves are getting optimized per our own prompt each and every day, and more the I think especially in an enterprise setting, it will be more and more about using agent in many circumstances as a way to combine software, meaning to build systems that leverage different type of tools and use the agent itself as a way to easily combine information together in a very flexible manner and solve almost for a middleware type of problem of how you solve a problem A by combining existing system tools or API B, C, and D.
Kind of speaking to one of your previous answers, agents could do a lot of things. If they can do anything, how should people be thinking about what they should do? Like, where should they start thinking about where to apply agents to their own business?
Yeah, I think that any agentic discussion could be about like what are the use cases that are real today. And the use cases we see as real today, March 2025, are use cases such as helping with knowledge, all of those assistants helping with knowledge and the retrieval and summarization of information with many applications across the board. And the, let's say, more chatbot version of it is helping you search. The more automation version of it is to automate some highly information retrieval type of tasks, such as market research, state-of-the-art research, and automation of response in intellectual property, RFP response for sales, project summarization or project report summarization for any type of manufacturing type of operations. So you've got the knowledge retrieval use cases that work. You've got some workflow orchestration type of task to help with some repetitive tasks that will work. You've got the augmentation and augmentation and automation of like customer service in many aspects. You've got Copilot for dev. So you've got use cases that are real today. Real today, as in we see among a customer a good appetite to build those or start having a mini ecosystem of tools and agents that they want to combine in order to do more by themselves on top of the agents already available through the various applications they already have in their information system. So we are today in this in between where you have use cases that are real today. I think the issue next for many organizations is this type of like messy middle of how you move from your agents from proof of concept to production, as in either an agent you added an activity into an application with an interesting proof of concept of a new usage, but like how do you actually do the change so that people actually use it and measure that they actually derive value of it, or how do you actually, for anything you build yourself, turn it into something you can trust enough in order to deploy it not just to 5 or 10 people, but to hundreds in your organization. And I think the big next step or the big question for organization is how they actually make it happen.
Yeah, we have some people in the chat saying that they're working on some use cases, but it's very early days. So I think that jives with what you're saying. People are experimenting, but what's next? I think my next question.
And again, I think that to share a number we shared in the past, last year we've seen about 1,000 use cases of advanced GenAI/agent among Dataiku customers. So it's fairly significant, but indeed it's well, compared to the number of use cases of data or ML at large in organization that we also see quite a bit of, it's a small fraction. So it's impressive in many instances because it's like fairly new and with in many aspects impressive impact. But it's also very early in the grand scheme of things, and also probably early compared to what it will be.
Yeah. You mentioned a bit about change management, which is interesting because that's a hard part. But I think one of the other hard parts is there's so many agent frameworks and so many agent tools that are popping up all over the place. How can we avoid a mess? How can we avoid having what maybe happened, 8 years ago with data science, where all of a sudden we just it's too hard to bring things from proof of concept to reality?
Yeah, I think that there is the way our best customers are succeeding is when they build things with agent. First, they have a form of a clear roadmap, as in ultimately the amount of time you can spend on a topic and the energy you can use in order to convince people around you to do the change, to give you access to the data, to let you use this model, to actually discuss with you and sit down with you to help you debug it. It's just proportional to the business impact. In the grand scheme of things, building an agent today is not that much, can be not really, especially the first proof of concept, an expensive task. That's the thing with generative, is that indeed you can get great things very quickly. The thing that remains expensive for many organizations is like, oh, you move from this interesting ID, this interesting agent. So the step from ID to proof of concept became very, very, very quick. Or you move that to something actually used, which is where all of this consideration of like, can you use it in production? Can you use it with real data? Can you use it with the full data? Can you fully secure it? Can you test it? Can you qualify it? Can you measure the impact? That's where you actually need to have those constraints, this help of those resources called humans that are not generative in any way, shape or form, and that actually still have their own free will in terms of inside an organization in order to help you and actually get things done. So the issue for many organizations is like to build that, to fully build that movement. And so when you're successful is usually when you actually build those around cases that are fairly clear so that you can have this mobilization inside the organization behind you for those use cases. And I think the second recipe is that given how fast the ecosystem is moving, you end up having projects where the technology is changing faster than the time for the project to deliver value. So it's like the good metaphor, and we've seen that across, again, many customers, meaning they switch, they switch for sure version of OpenAI, subversion of OpenAI models or Anthropic models or whatsoever from the beginning to the end, but like even like the major version in many cases. You start a project and RAG was in a way, and in between you end up having 3, 4, 5 different RAG techniques that could change a different way to think about it. You start a project in a given situation, and then the multiple steps you were doing could actually be solved better with a reasoning model that make it more trivial. You start a project with the core focus of managing the tables inside slides in your documents, and a few months later, because image model get way better, you can solve it completely differently.
Yeah.
So I think that's every one of us in this ecosystem had some version, I think, of this experience in the last few months. I think that if we just take a step back, it means that you need to build for optionalities. You need to build for building the thing and running the car while you change the tires at the same time. And I think that it's this modular mindset, which is easy if you've got sometimes an engineering mindset, which is like you just build things with abstraction because at the end of the day, you'll build something anyway bigger than you think, and you will have to change the part as part of it. I think that must be the mindset of people building agents.
Yeah, this kind of speaks to Nadine's point in the chat. She said she was asking, how do I understand or think about maintenance over time? Like if you were talking about it in terms of the tech advancing, but she's meaning also like if we become really reliant on one tool, or if there's somebody who built it and then they leave, like what do I do? And so I think it's kind of the same sort of abstraction and optionality.
Yeah, I think that there is a need of meaning, and that, of course, well, at the end of the day, speaking for our own vision at Dataiku, but like at the end of the day, it's very hard for us not to do so, given how passionate we are about the topic. But I think that even if it's agent and everything is in theory text used by a model and calling APIs, you need to have systems and way to execute it so that you understand what is the theory, what is calling what, have a great control of the exact data being used, have the operationalization of updating this data, and so forth. And last but not least, and this might be a daring idea, I think that what we miss in this ecosystem is a true science of agents. Because everyone can do it, it feels like it's not a science in the sense of like everyone can build an agent in 2025. Every kid can build an agent, literally. But in the enterprise, you need the true science of agent akin to data science, which is all about the testing and the validation of agents so that we build agents with some guarantees around it. In the enterprise, what makes an enterprise tick is the ability to have a consistent decision across time, because you're making financial trade-offs, you're making strategic decisions and so forth. And a strategic decision is actually the consistency of lots of micro decisions across time. And in order to get that with agentic system, you actually need to test them. You actually need to combine them sometimes with non-generative, non-LLM type of capabilities. And I think that's part of the challenge for all of us building agents in 2025 is that even articulating, oh, this should work is meaning still a work in progress, even if I think many of us have the same intuition.
Yeah, I want to move to a question from Sathish. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, which is similar to a question I wanted to ask you, which is like, should we wait until this is more stable before we start building this? And his question or her question is it just too early to start using AI agents in maybe in an enterprise context specifically?
I don't think so. I think most companies have to do it, have to test it, have to build this knowledge of how to do it. I think that in the grand scheme of things, every company, because of its culture, will have a different appetite for risk. It's not necessarily driven by the sector they're in, nor by the countries they're in, but like just by the culture of the company. And depending on their culture, they will have this different way to think about risk associated to AI. But some of them will want to control very well the budget associated to AI, some like what models do we actually use and do understand the property, the intellectual property around it, some around data, some around confidentiality, some around exact customer impact and privacy and so forth. They will have all different levels of risk and risk tolerance. But like at the end of the day, on one end, I think no organization should have the low level of risk tolerance where they're doing nothing right now. But every of them, whatever the sector, will have some strategy to put in place in order to understand what's happening with agents, and probably will converge to having some form of central control where you can understand within your organization who is building what in terms of agent, for what type of impact, what data is being used or not. The refinement of that and the degree of detail and what's needed will vary from one company to the other, and their appetite of risk, their appetite of taking risks, and the way they think about it, and the way they think about power and control. But every organization will actually have a variant of this need. And I think it's fulfilling this need of control over agents that will unlock for organization their ability to actually have the necessary trust in it to create and start creating.
William has kind of an interesting comment here, which is, what do you see as the best opportunities for firms to gain a lasting competitive advantage by exploiting and using agents? Like, how can people ensure that they're ahead of the game and not just keeping up with what everyone else is doing?
From my perspective, which is very opinionated and self-serving, I admit it, it's by building their own to a large extent. You could have a future where many of the tasks we, like all of us, are doing today are augmented by agents. And that you've got for every aspect of it, a given agent in our existing piece of software doing it for us. The challenge, the strategic challenge for an organization is that if they just have that, they become less and less different compared to their neighbor, compared to their competitors, meaning every organization will end up having the same thing. You could imagine a future where, in a very subtle manner, every, let's say, software company become more and more similar because they start having all the same websites, just because it's all generated by the same software, where every fashion company becomes more and more similar just because everything gets generated by the same software, by the same agent, and so on. And so in this world, indeed, you start losing your competitive differentiators because you just rely on agents and intelligence that is outside of your own perimeter. And it might be a very poetic way to think about it, but it means that the challenge for companies is that they might lose their soul in the process, meaning everything will be done by someone else. The practical challenge, if we're more down to earth, is that in a world where you've got less competitive differentiator, the main differentiator is your size, because that's where you get like benefits from scale. And so ultimately, the companies benefiting from a lack of competition are the biggest ones. And in any sector, the biggest company are like very few. By design, it's like the biggest one. You've got one or two. And so I think the challenge for many companies that are not the biggest of their sector is that, and probably more so for the company which is the biggest, in fact, is that if they want to still be competitive and in 5 or 10 years, they need to make sure they know how to build agents that are their own. And the starting point is like building now, I think, in order to build the skills so that you know how to build, how to test and build the trust. Your own means a lot being based on your data, your system, your know-how, how you actually want the business to be run, or you actually want your customer to be served, and so forth. And so I think this enthusiasm in building is what's necessary for companies actually to go through this transformation.
Yeah, we have Bjorn in the chat who has a comment where he says, I'm contacted by companies claiming to have, XYZ agents ready to buy off the shelf. Is that really possible? And it sounds like what you're saying is like, yes, maybe, but
it is. And it makes sense to use it here and there. Meaning, and at Dataiku we do it also, but like for things that are core to our business, that we believe is our soul, we actually want to build it. For things that are very specific to our own data and system, we need to build it. And I think that's the skill set of some of the great leaders, and especially IT leaders in the next few years, will be this ability to make the determination of what's important versus not. It won't be about, you accelerate the transformation to the cloud or whatsoever, because it's behind us. It would be about making those calls.
Yeah. Someone has asked a question that's been upvoted a lot of times. It's a little bit of a shift in gears, but I think it's a good one, which is how do you evaluate feasibility and return on investment of agents? And I think this question is so interesting because I always think about like, would you ever ask about the return of investment of having a website or using the internet? Like probably not. And so how should people be thinking about return on investment with AI agents right now? And do you have any tips for how they should be measuring that?
No, I think the part which is where the question of return on investment is different or potentially more fair, or is that many use cases of agents are about augmenting or replacing an existing business process. So because you've got a before and an after, it makes sense to measure the ROI. And the reason why it's a question is, in fact, from our experience, not yet so much about the cost of build or the cost of run. I think it's, generally speaking, not the topic in 2025. It's more than for the R of ROI to happen, you need to have the change of this new process being actually used and implemented, one. And second, a more nuanced one is that sometimes you've got some side effects of the application of the agent that outweigh the benefits. If I'm taking a practical example that people in development sometimes talk about or feel about is you can get lots of benefits of using agents for development purposes, but the challenge is that depending on your code base and lots of different factors, agent over time can create nuance, bugs, or complications, as well as reducing the ability of your engineers to understand the code base that will actually over time create limitation and limit their benefits. So the middle term, because it's a complex process change, the middle term benefit, the middle term return is harder to assess, which is why I do believe that for enterprise, the key unlock for agent is the ability to measure their impact, which is then in the science of actually measuring with data what happened before and what happened after, and avoid situation where you build agents or invest too much on agents that would be on non-measurable processes. And you've got so many measurable processes in your enterprise and so many potential use cases that anyway, that's an easy way to prioritize.
Yeah, for sure. We have several questions around governance. How do you keep track of it all? You touched on it when I asked a question earlier about tooling and how do you manage it. But right now our top question is how can and should enterprises think about privacy and security of data when using AI agents? Again, you touched on it a little bit, but I think people are interested to hear more on that.
Yeah, and I think that from our perspective, not meaning there are things that are easy, as in like we see it done for ages in our own perimeter, which is the security and structured data and how you share information in an enterprise, which is an hard topic, but like that all of our customers have to do, and it pertains to the fact that any company needs to have perimeters where they understand who can see what, who can see which number, and so forth. And that's table stake. The issue we see more and more with agents are twofold. One is when leveraging unstructured data, company can discover that some of their information assets were actually less secure than they believe, essentially because they were not easy to discover or search. Meaning, a way to think about it is that you've got lots of information that are sit in your Google Drive and SharePoint and so forth that may contain information you were not aware that was shared that thoroughly within the company. And when aggregated in a certain way, provide information to way too many people compared to what you believe. And so I think there is a way to, there is a need in this ecosystem to provide tools and systems that long-term will be a lot about securing information assets differently, but right now are about building agents with a set of guardrails to mitigate the fact that the situation is still imperfect when working on unstructured data, like making sure that the topics, the use of those systems are well guarded, just because you just otherwise extend your surface of attack as a company in a way that is not appropriate. So you need to put some early defensive measure in place that makes sense. I think another second aspect is when using tools and connectivity to different systems, there is a way to think about information access and all of that great things differently, and making sure that you just don't create a new kind of information leak or data leak by providing access to a tool from an agent. And this, from my perspective, calls for a way to build agents where there is a very strict way to think about tools, but essentially every instantiation of tools, making sure that every way you can use a tool, which is a very generic way to access an application, into how it is instantiated, meaning for a specific use case or with specific parameters, is properly guarded by IT, so that you have a better control on like how information could flow. And I think that this, in the next couple of years, is what's needed. in order for the agentic ecosystem to flourish in the enterprise.
Perfect lead in to a couple of questions we have asking, where does Dataiku play in this space? Like, what value does Dataiku provide? And how do we solve for some of these things that we've been talking about over the past 30 minutes?
Yep. So Dataiku, meaning at Dataiku, what our goal is to provide an orchestration layer which span across analytics and models in the sense of predictive models and agents. And first, we believe that providing that in the enterprise as a no-code platforms enable more people to do and build, and enable for the enterprise to have a central place where they can actually combine those things in with the level of control they need. And the agentic space itself, what we thrive for is building, having a way to build agents that can connect to any type of a vector database or LLM out there, and do that either in a no-code way, completely visually, or like leveraging the existing and-great open source ecosystem, combined with a system of guardrails and production systems, so that it's easier for the enterprise to scale that. It's a very long way to say that what we want to do is a way for a central IT to deploy in a very controlled way with the LLM they decided they can use, and with the data they decided they can use in a specific way, and with the tools they decided they can use, a way for people in the business to cautiously but vigorously build agents that can actually get things done and use the right data compared to new hallucinated data, and even ideally use the existing forecast and models instead of like reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, Nadir had an interesting comment that I think goes along with what you're talking about. And he's asking, do you think that in the Gen AI landscape, we'll see the same divide where, there's all these great and amazing tools coming out for B2C and people are super delighted by what's going on, but then the enterprise lags way behind? Or do you think that that's something that we will not see so much with agents?
I will spin it up. I think that it's not lagging behind. It's having tools that have the constraints required because of their impact. That's actually the way I think about it. I think that indeed we will be using agents and even building little agents for our own personal usage now in the next few years. But in the enterprise, for good reasons, you have a set of constraints that you need to adhere to. And the challenge is indeed for the enterprise to find the right trade-off where they put the control in place, but they empower people in the business.
Enter Dataiku.
Yeah. And here at Dataiku, that's what we strive for, meaning providing the platform that enable companies to find the right trade-off that match their appetite for risk, and matching their existing IT choices and IT constraints. If you don't do that, indeed, as an enterprise, if you just lock everything up and there is only 5 people in your company that can build agents, you will end up having people in the business either doing everything on ChatGPT on their own without telling you, or buying random tools, and you will end up with a big mess of like lots of different agents and things to reintegrate everywhere down the road. And so I think that lots of smart enterprise will, one way or another, solve for this problem of enabling people to benefit from this opportunity to create agents, but with the right setup so that they can actually do it in a controlled way.
Yeah. We have a comment about whether there are any areas where industries maybe where agents are just completely unsuitable. And I like this question because we have customers from all kinds of industries and it seems like everyone's thinking about it. Do you think there's anywhere where we're seeing that it's just not applicable?
No, I think it's what right now they might not be applied and potentially applicable to every aspect of a business, but you have or in all sectors you've got some application, and in sectors where for regulatory or sensitivity reason it cannot be applied to, let's say, your customer interaction. You've got banks applying it a lot to and looking at applying it a lot to lots of back office operation related to efficiencies. So I think that it's not, it doesn't seem to be an area where you've got sectors that should not look a bit into it.
Agreed. This question is kind of general, but I like it because I think there's a lot of people who are in the boat of this is all new. I feel like I don't have a grasp of what's going on. I'm uncomfortable. What would you recommend for people who want to get started really seriously learning about agents and starting to take their first steps in implementing them?
I think that there is I think that practice, meaning from my perspective, the way to learn is practice and using practical software to build an agent. Okay, that's a very, very broad statement and obviously a little bit self-serving. So I'll try to do something more narrow, which I'll frame this way. I think it's, to start with, it's not about necessarily building something which is a lighthouse project or something for someone else. I think there is some art into looking at a process you kind of know fairly well, meaning some repetitive task that you know what are the 3 or 4 steps to do it, and playing the game of understanding how you can actually re-implement it by through some agentic behavior, as in like, oh, you would use this or that tool, or you would actually retrieve this or that information. And for many aspects of it are many easy type of projects to think with, I think, to learn, are the one with no impact, as in where it's about summarizing or retrieving information in multiple steps, which is something we actually all do all day long without realizing it. To check something, we go A, B, C, and then we synthesize things in our day-to-day job. And that's things that can be automated with an agent. Whether it's useful or not at the end of the day for your own life, it's never that clear, but like it's, I believe, a great way to build your own first agent use case and actually understand more how it works in practice. Meaning, if you don't get the practice, I think all of those abstract conversation and webinar you will hear about agents are great, but might miss the point of you actually living through it.
Yes, and a few webinars ago, we did do a walkthrough of how to build a simple agent in Dataiku. So if you are interested in checking that out, we will send it as a follow-up to this webinar for those of you who'd like to build your first one. Maybe one more question before final thoughts, because we're getting close to time here. There's a question around, is data governance required to build and implement AI agents? I kind of extrapolate that to mean this argument that, oh, it always comes back to data quality. If we don't have the data, then we can't build anything, which was kind of the same argument people had for machine learning as well. It's like, oh, the data is not good enough, so therefore it's not possible. Hi, is that true? Is that not true? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Could you mean that data is, if you don't have the data, you cannot build your agent?
Well, that if the data quality is not, what is the role of data quality in AI agents? Is that really a blocker?
Yeah, it's a blocker in lots of, it's a blocker of lots of specific use cases, and but maybe even more specifically, a blocking factor to automate some task of an agent, like answering a question with a number or retrieving information, is the data quality in the specific sense of having a good description of the data, having a good description of like what is the data and what is the reference data, and some of the metrics and the convention in your organization. So indeed what we see among our customers, and I think that a topic of focus for us would be indeed how we can indeed further help on that front. Without the right data, you can build lots of agents, but no agent that need data.
We're getting close to time. Any final thoughts? If you want to leave people with anything here to chew on for the rest of their day, what would you say?
Oh my.
Started with a big question, end with a big question.
And with a big question. I think that the next the next couple of years will be interesting for many people in IT and in data, because lots of the things we have learned or what we believe were table stake will still be table stake, but at the same time, the core skills will be about becoming translators. What I see as a trend is, among many of our customers, is the fact that the data scientists need to become more and more aware of business processes, and in the specific sense that they can apply a lot of what they learn to do in order not to build yet another predictive model, but to get into the business and help them decipher how they could formalize their process into something that could be agentified, or at the very least, accelerated by generative AI. And so the role of data practitioner on that front would, I think, change. And there is, I think, a lot to benefit from by anticipating this move.
Wonderful. Thank you, Florian. And thank you to everyone in the audience who asked a question, left a comment. Lots of great discussion. Really appreciate it. We have lots and lots of other webinars in this series that are coming up. So please do check out our events page on our website and sign up for a couple that are upcoming. We'll also include the links in the follow-up emails to our next couple of webinars, in addition to the last couple. Lots of thank yous from the audience. Thank you, Florian. And we'll see you in our next session, hopefully. Bye, everybody.